for District 2, the best district. Super glad you're here. It's my privilege to be the council member to represent District 2 and about 70,000 constituents in this area. So we always start off the meeting by doing introductions, and we always have everyone tell us their favorite thing about Wichita. But in the spirit of Valentine's Day, don't forget your loved one. We're going to do what you love the most about Wichita, and you can't repeat what somebody else said. Okay, so Dave will go and get you started. You're lucky tonight.
David Babish, and I'm from Willow Bend. And I think I like the library because Stephanie helped me get audio books and electronic books. They talk to me, and I can read them. So our library system is pretty extraordinary.
Keith Lang, Sierra Hills. What I love the most about Wichita.
It should not be hard.
I love the fact that Becky reminded me that with her Valentine's stuff that Friday is the big day.
I need to take you on a tour of the city.
No, I'm really excited. I'm a big baseball fan, so I'm loving the new ballpark coming up, and I can't wait to get in there and partake in that.
My name is Dee Nice-Bonker, and I represent Whispering Lakes Estates, 159th and Harry. The thing I love most about Wichita is its people. Recently had an opportunity to reach out and receive support from friends and neighbors, and the people here are just so loving and compassionate and caring, and it's just awesome to be a part of this community.
Thank you.
My name is Janetta Everett, and I represent District 2. That's the.
You're in the right place.
Good things. The waterfront. And I think what I love about Wichita is the boldness and the bold attitude that we're starting to see. Everybody's looking forward to the growth that's going on here and just stepping outside of our comfort zones and thinking for the future of our kids and grandkids and further generations.
My name is Mike Elstad. I'm on East Pawnee, and my favorite thing right now is the growth and atmosphere from College Hill all the way to Delano. Just the great things to do with family and otherwise.
Thank you again. I'm Becky Tuttle. What I love about Wichita is I made a New Year's resolution to try and eat local. And so far when we do eat out, I've been enjoying all of Wichita's awesome local restaurants and breweries.
I'm Sam Lindeman from Bonnie Bray. I think what I love most about Wichita is just all the improvements you start to see around the city and everything, and just looking to see how it all shapes up.
Nazir Justly, East Kellogg. Century 2, although I'm okay with the new plan for it, but Century 2, home of the home show. Where we went last
That's
week.
right. This weekend.
I'm Corey Buckta, the Community Service Representative for District 2, and what I love most is how passionate people are about things, whether you agree with them or not. Can't deny that people in this city are passionate.
Nick Howell, Savannah, and with their current increased presence, I'd like to go on record that I love the police department.
Smart.
He's just
Never fails to get up, I tell you.
He's just pandering. He's gonna speed the whole
He loves driving speed.
Y'all would follow him on the way home.
Right. He'll be cutting you off in a minute. Such a kiss up.
I know, man.
I'm Tracy Adams, Harrison Park area. What I love about Wichita is the traffic. I love the fact that you can get anywhere in the greater Wichita area in 15 to 20 minutes.
Good evening, Alicia Sanchez, Sycamore Village. What I love right now, there's a lot of things I love, the new carousel at Botanica. My little guy loves it,
Nice.
so it's a fun place to go and brings back
Good
memories from my childhood. That was a good one. Awesome.
All right, so next we're gonna do an approval of the agenda, but we're gonna request that we switch items 8 and 9. Director Tang is here and he needs to go, and then also we're gonna have it by Skype, and it'll just be quicker So if you all, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with items 8 and 9 in reverse.
So moved.
Alicia, anything? Second? Second. Janetta, okay, all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Fantastic. Corey, as always, did a great job with the minutes from last month. I think he sent them to you, they went out Friday. So I would entertain an approval of the minutes for January 14th.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mike.
Second.
Second is here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Awesome, thank you. Does anyone in the community want to have an agenda item? So if you were here to discuss anything that isn't on the agenda, this is an opportunity. All right, we're gonna roll right into staff reports. Fire. So you have to state your name and what you love about Wichita.
All right. I'm Dave Hirsch from Station 9. I love the people, friendly people, especially compared to other places in the country. It's pretty common to walk around other places in the country and nobody will say anything to you. And it's pretty common here just to walk by and say hi and people have a conversation with you. So that's what I like. I'll talk about a couple fires we've had out east here. 2 major garage fires that we had in January. One on East Castle and one on South Michelle, which are both South Kellogg and East quite a ways. Both of them were over $100,000 damage, which is easy to do when the garages are involved and you got a couple cars in there. And both of them were electrical problems in origin. So just be aware of what you're doing in your garage because that loss can add up really quick. And last month, I forgot to talk about the Textron explosion. So I'll talk about it a little bit, if that's all right. We had 25 city units at the explosion to help mitigate that incident. There's 11 county units, and that's a county-owned property, or county property, as opposed to the city property, but the city still responds to that and is responsible for that. So you might take that into consideration when we start talking about consolidation, Ms. Tuttle. Anybody have any questions on that incident? It's probably our most significant incident of the year.
There's a 3-inch pipe of nitrogen that blew up and something.
Well, an autoclave is actually what blew up. It was overpressurized by something, probably nitrogen of some sort. An autoclave is a big oven that they cook parts in. It was a 25 by 65 foot oven that got overpressurized somehow. We didn't get the details on why or how it was overpressurized, but it was overpressurized and blew the front doors off of it. So the debris you see in the videos that are going around, those are the giant doors, 25-foot doors flying through there about 400 feet or so.
Whoa.
And so blessed that it was during the holidays.
Yes,
and more
we were very lucky. The people there, Testron and Beach, said traffic is pretty constant through that area, right there. And, luckily, with the holiday shutdown, there was hardly anybody there, just a few maintenance workers. So we really lucky that way.
Was there any fire?
Just a small fire with some debris around the Essex storage area, around in front of the warehouse that the autoclave were in, and some nitrogen tanks fell over, and there was a gas line involved, 3-inch gas line involved after the explosion, so we had to go in there and shut it off and control that, but it didn't create a fire. We were lucky that way.
Just lucky.
Yeah, lucky all the way around.
Any other questions?
I do.
Yes.
Not sure if you have the answer, but being in the county surrounded by the city, does that mean none of the property tax they pay come back to the city?
Well, the way I understand it, I'm not even sure if they pay tax. They may be exempt from taxes. I don't know how the county works with those kinds of properties, those large aircraft companies. They may be exempt. I could tell you that.
Yeah, and I don't know for sure, too, but I can find out. You want me to find out?
Okay.
Anything else?
Everybody's fine now, right?
Yeah, nobody was hurt, well, nobody was significantly
That's
hurt.
not
There were
good.
some injuries. I think one guy lost his hearing because he was pretty close to it, but
That's pretty.
overall, very, very lucky.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for all you do. Community police. You got lots of help tonight.
I'm Officer Snyder.
And what do you love about Wichita? You're
You're
not getting out of it.
I would probably say the cost of living.
Oh, yeah.
Is definitely cheaper here than some of the other places I've lived around the country, so. Officer Peterson's with me here tonight. So for those of you who don't know me, I work on the Patrol North side, you work Patrol East side, so we've got that two pretty much covered. I'm just gonna go over the basic numbers that we had from that meeting to now. This is maybe a little changed a little bit because I pulled these last week right in front of. But we didn't, from what I saw, we didn't have any robberies that were accounted for. There was 2 burglary reports that occurred. 11 larcenies that happened, one with a gun that was taken. There's 20 DVs that occurred, 1 forgery. And I'm not going over everything because that would take forever, just going to highlight the big stuff. 34 non-injury accidents in the district, 4 were injury accidents. There were 31 disturbances, 2 rape reports were reported, and 2 auto thefts were recovered on this side of town. So again, the big thing for us is always going to be especially with our retail stuff over here, is going to be larcenies. So Officer Peterson is actually working a special assignment, so he's going to come up and talk about that real quick.
I'm Nathan Peterson, brand new to CP. Today is actually my first day. Been on the department 16 years though. I'm assigned to 33 beat, which is kind of the area, Oliver area. What I love about Wichita, I love the whitetail deer hunting opportunities that this area provides. So, and that East Kellogg's open, because I live in Butler County, so that's been very helpful for my commute. So some numbers to piggyback on that just a little bit briefly, because I think there's some trends here that are very nice. This just encompasses Patrol East, but of Part 1 offenses, which would include robbery, aggravated assault and battery, burglary, both residential and commercial, and auto thefts, all of those are down. And that's from the last 3 months of numbers comparative between this year and the same time last year. So it's very nice to see anytime those numbers are going down, and most of them are pretty substantial. Larcenies are up, however. One thing I don't like about these numbers for this time of the year is it encompasses the holiday season, which that is the highest that time of the year. And those numbers, although we expect to see them probably increase a little bit during that time of the year, they vary pretty significantly from year to year. So it's kind of hard to do a lot with those numbers encompassing the holiday season. The one trend we have noticed in the Patrol East Bureau, though, is larceny to autos. There's been a number of hotspots throughout Patrol East for people getting their cars broken into. And although I can't talk much about it because we've got a pretty elaborate project going on, better part of the Patrol East team's been involved with it for the last few weeks. But we've got a group of individuals that we think are relatively organized in stealing people's stuff and then using their debit cards and credit cards and stuff like that. Maybe in the next week or so, we might be able to make a number of arrests on that. It should help these numbers quite a bit. So I would imagine by the next meeting, we might be able to talk about all the things that were done more specifically in that. And just lastly on it, it's reminded me doing this assignment that you could almost guarantee to not get your car broken into if you lock your doors and do not leave anything valuable. Because this group, amongst others, they're not going to risk the probability of getting caught breaking out a window to a car where there's not a guaranteed payoff. Every window that gets broken almost exclusively is because there's a purse visible, there's a cell phone visible, there's a bag that might have something good in it, even though it may just be gym clothes. But we marked that quite a bit. Almost every one of these cases, and I'm talking hundreds of them, valuables are left in the car and windows are being broken out. So definitely a message we need to get out to everyone. Put your stuff away and lock your doors. Any questions?
Listen, normally you report there's a lot of guns being stolen out of the cars. Is that going on?
I do not have numbers for that, so I should probably be careful
According to
with
this,
mine.
there was only 1 gun taken from the last meeting to this meeting.
Really? It is, so is that after some type of thing that you guys are doing, you caught a ring or something?
We hope so. Something, I don't know what I never agree with those numbers just from my experiences. I feel like there's guns and guns being stolen. Those numbers never seem to support it. But I think it's this reason. I even have family members and people that I thought were relatively responsible than gun owners. But it amazes me the amount of people that their storage for a secondary gun is their car. They just leave it there. I mean, they don't take it in the house at the end of the night. They'll run some errands and it's just, I guess, constant safety in their car. Well, that's horrible. That's not a place to store them. So if you said there's one, then
That's what the number is.
There's one.
Probably not what they are, but that's what the
That's
number
probably
is.
recorded.
we've seen that on the news a number of times, and the numbers that I have seen, they don't seem to be very significant. There hasn't seemed to be a significant increase in them as a result of all the gun sales. But I think if you just do simple math, you look at gun sales, they have gone up substantially. Number of people are carrying a gun simply because they can, which is fine. But the more guns that are out there on the street, in somebody's purse, in somebody's vehicle, that's just that many more guns that can't be stolen. So
In
if
September.
one is it, that's great.
Yeah, in September, we had 29 in the month, so that's why we're still, but we've been promoting also the Save a Casing program. So if you do have a gun,
Which is huge.
yeah, to make sure that you save at least one of your casings, so that way if it's stolen,
Yeah.
the police have.
If you didn't know, so an extended casing, it's much like the extractor marks and stuff, when that is ejected from a gun, is much like a fingerprint. I mean, it is very, it's exactly like a fingerprint, and that it is very unique to that specific gun. So that is a great program.
Any other questions?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
I think it was Saturday night. I live right across the street from Town East.
Okay.
And I don't know what was going on, but a high number of police cars raced into there,
Into Town East?
into the Town East parking lot. So something was going on, but they didn't seem to stay around very long, so I don't know if it was a false report, but it
What
always
time was it?
concerns me. I want to say early evening.
The mall is still open.
Yeah, they were still open.
There were two machines there.
No.
Yeah, I wasn't working Saturday,
Yeah.
but there was nothing that came across any of the briefs that I got today that talked about anything
Normally when that
significant.
happens, what normally happens is somebody calls out some kind of disturbance inside the mall. And basically somebody with close responding units to try to get there, just because of the size of the mall and the amount of people that are in there. A lot of times, by the time we get there, a couple officers from mall security already have it handled. They disregard us. So,
And just speaking more historically, there's, groups of kids there, they get into a bit of a fight. And the second that you put out that 5, 6, 10 people are involved in something, that's gonna get a pretty.
Well, it
significant
was just kind of, a significant number of police cars, and they were moving a lot faster than I thought they did in parking lots. Even. They got in there fairly quickly.
Sure.
So I just wondered.
Sure.
Anything else?
Just curious question, around tax time, everybody getting refunds back, is there any correlation with crime rates going up or down with just everybody?
I've never noticed it. In fact, if anything, there's a number of people who are getting free money anyway. So
That's why I was curious.
their reason to thieve may be
Right.
reduced a little bit. Now, tax fraud, significantly, people who steal social security numbers and stuff, they're putting in, and that's been an issue for the last 3 or 4 years, where if, like a gal today had her purse stolen, all of her kids' social security cards were in it, her social security card, her passport. Well, that's, beyond anything one of these groups of people would need to do fraudulent stuff like that. So one of the guys I worked with actually last year, they went to put in their taxes and they said, hey, you've already done this. And, so that's never.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
you're
for your
welcome.
service. Be safe. All right, Savannah, you're next. You know the drill, right?
The thing I love about Wichita would be that my family's here. I'm Savannah, I'm the manager here at the Rockwell Branch Library. I just have a couple things to share with you tonight. E-audiobooks are now circulating on Wichita eReads, the library's digital collection. We did not have audiobooks previously, and so we now have some offerings for that. To access the library's collection of audiobooks, download the Libby by Overdrive app on your smartphone or tablet, and then you'll be able to use your library card to access our collection of audiobooks and ebooks. On Tuesday, February 18th, children ages 8 to 11 who like dinosaurs and fossils can experience stories and crafts about prehistoric animals, and will get the opportunity to touch some real fossils. At our Fun with Fossils program, it's 2:30 to 3:30 here at the Rockwell Ranch. Registration is required for that, so you can either give us a call or visit us online to register for that. And then last week, we did offer a technology class specifically for homeschool students. On Thursday, February 6th, we did a letters to a friend class, which was intro to Microsoft Word. That was taught by our youth services librarian. And we worked with students that are ages 8 to 12 who are homeschooled, so it was during the day. And she taught them how to use Microsoft Word to write a letter to a friend. And we had a really great turnout for that. Any questions for me?
How many books did you go back to?
Probably around 200.
Well, that was in Titanic, right?
Yep.
So, you inspired one life. So
Okay.
Any questions? Thank you for your service,
Thank you.
Savannah. Thank you. Awesome. I would entertain a motion to receive and file staff reports.
So
Second? All those in favor, aye? Excellent, thank you so much. Okay, so now item 8 is going to be downtown streets conceptual plan update. And we have Director Mike Tan from Transit here. And then we're going to be having a presentation via Skype. So I'm going to step over here so I can.
Good evening, everyone. It says on your schedule that Scott Wadle was supposed to be here, so if you don't know Scott, I'm not Scott. There are times I wish I was Scott, but I am not. So I am Mike Tan, I'm the Director of Transit, and the study is housed in our department, so that's why we are here to provide that, follow what everybody else is doing. I've been in Wichita a little over a year and a half. So I'm always finding things I like about Wichita, but Saturday night I went to the symphony, so that was fantastic. I really loved it. That was great. And see that place full and packed and everybody staying to the very end. It was really cool, really, really cool. So what we have here is there's a gentleman that will be giving the Skype presentation from Nelson Nygaard. His name is Jim Watson. He's been working in Wichita, coming in for parts of the study and also providing information from his location with regards to this plan. This is a holistic plan. You've seen some things that have popped up in the newspaper that focus on small snippets of this entire plan. And from the standpoint of, this is a study. This is to look at what options are available, what would be best for the changing downtown area that we have. We have development going down in that area. We have streets that have been in the designs that have been in that way, the way they're designed for many, many, many years. And as things change, we should also be looking at options that are available, especially as planning tools become available. So this is in no way, shape, or form to say this is what it's going to be. What we really want to do with these meetings is to update the DABs on everything that's going on, where we stand right now. There's some forms that Corey has. I would ask that you write down your questions and submit those back to us so that we can submit those in writing. On the city's website is this presentation and also some further information with regards to the streets plan. So we wanted to make sure that we went to every DAB and provided them the same information so you know where we stand at this point in time. So when you're engaged or you see things or you want to know where we stand, this will do that. So without further ado, I will have Jim Watson take it over from Nelson Nygaard to update you on the project.
Thanks, Mike. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Mike. We've been working through this for a while, and I'm going to just walk through a little bit of the project process and then some of the concepts that we've been working on so far. Generally speaking, the downtown street study area that we're looking at goes from Murdoch to the north to Washington to the east, down to Kellogg, and then we're taking it just across the river, not quite to McLean, but just across the river. We've been through this whole process where we started with what we call discovery, which is just looking at what past plans, what y'all have done in the past. And then we're in a little bit of a feedback loop right now where we're going through desire, which is us learning from the community what you see and how you see things going forward in the future. And then we're proposing some designs. And so we've been going back and forth through that for the past several months. Moving forward, as we move forward to the spring and summer, we're going to be summing all this up in some documentation. When we started this, we wanted to kind of look backward a little bit to look forward. So, we look at all the streets downtown, we see a lot of vibrancy, but we also see that the streets have evolved over time. We want to kind of keep that in mind, keep the past vibrancy, but also keep in mind how things have evolved over time and wondering how things need to evolve as we move forward into the future. We worked with the community and we worked with the city staff to develop a few draft goals. And these we've been bouncing around at all of our meetings since we did our first kickoff back last year. But we've been trying to get feedback, and ultimately as we develop concepts and such for the future, we want to look back to these. And these are kind of our measuring stick that we kind of point back to see if the concepts that we're coming up for in the future really kind of hit back to these. Just in terms of what we've done so far, we did a public kickoff meeting about a year ago at the distillery in Old Town. In April, we immediately heard that there was kind of some information on Douglas Avenue, so we kind of did a deep dive in the spring into what had been proposed in Douglas Avenue and what could be in the future. In June, we came back and we did these open design sessions at the Candela at the Lux downtown, where we invited folks in to kind of give us their feedback as we were working through some concepts. We also had a tent over at Riverfest to talk to folks as well. And then in September, we did another tent at Open Streets. We were kind of talking to people as we were right there on the street downtown, getting people's thoughts as they were on the street. Throughout the whole thing, I guess dating back through last summer, we've been having a variety of stakeholder meetings as well with some of the employers downtown, some of the community groups such as Bike Walk Wichita or downtown Wichita, and just trying to get their feedback as we worked through this as well. It's just a few pictures of some of our events that we've done. But moving forward, what we're doing here, as Mike said, we're here trying to get some feedback from not just the downtown area, but knowing that what is proposed downtown really doesn't just affect those folks downtown, but they affect all Wichitans. So we want to try to get as much feedback as we can from throughout the city. Moving forward, we're planning an open house on March 24th. So if you really want more information on this and want to kind of see where we're at, please mark down March 24th. I think I'm okay to say this at this point because I think we actually finalized it today, but we're looking to do that at the Candela at the Lux again at First and Market downtown on March 24th. But look out for some timing on that. We're still nailing down times. As we move forward in the spring, we'll be finalizing the report, coordinating with City Council, and then looking to kind of formalize everything as we move into the summer. And with that, I'll walk through some of our concepts and how we got to them. I know this is small, and I apologize. As Mike said, this presentation is going to be on our project website, which I'll have the address at the end. But what we really wanted to do was start with understanding how the downtown street grid works today. And as Mike said, this is a holistic study. So we're wanting to see how the whole network works together. The different colors that you see there, the darker colors are more lanes on the street. Lighter colors are less lanes on the street. The greens you see there are bicycle lanes. We've noted where parking is, where one-way streets are. Then we wanted to see kind of how some of the other multimodal aspects of the street grid are working. So, now you have the transit center that's there downtown, and the the transit routes pulse out of the transit center now. So with your one-way streets that you have around there, it almost kind of creates a little bit of a pinwheel effect on where the buses, what streets the buses use today. We also note that there's limited east-west bike connectivity south of First Street. So these are just some things that we kind of continue thinking through as we started to kind of understand how the street grid works. We also wanted to take a look at what the daily traffic volumes are. So when you look at this, the darker colors here are higher traffic volumes. And it's probably no surprise to anybody that some of the highest volumes of traffic that we saw were over on Washington, south of Waterman. But one of the things we didn't want to do on this is just have a gut reaction to the traffic volumes. We also wanted to look and compare that back to what the number of lanes that you have on these streets to get an understanding of what the capacity of those streets are relative to what the daily traffic volumes are. So when we made that comparison, what we found was that a lot of the streets downtown have some opportunity for change. Now that doesn't mean that some of these streets may have kind of peak surges in traffic where you may need some extra capacity here or there to handle the afternoon rush or the morning rush. But generally speaking, for a lot of the day, many of these streets are built larger than what they would typically accommodate. So that got us thinking about what are the benefits of road diets. So road diets are where you take a look at the number of lanes that are on a street and try to right size that street for the activity that's on that street. So we think about, what the pros and cons are to a 4+ lane section. Those are good for roadways that have over 25,000 vehicles in a day. And then we think back to what a 2 to 3 lane section, what the pros and cons are with those, that they slow down traffic a little bit, but there may also be some safety and walkability benefits to those. We also wanted to kind of think about what the one-way street versus two-way street, what the pros and cons to each one of those were. Like the wider streets, sometimes a one-way street with more lanes can provide higher capacity and higher speeds. And reversing that to a two-way street, can slow traffic down. But there's some, for the one-way streets, we heard a lot from some of the community downtown on the, for people that don't go downtown a lot, sometimes they get lost on the one-way streets. So going to the two-way streets sometimes can provide a little bit more direct routes for folks to and from their destination. And we wanted to kind of look and see what some other similar sized cities are doing too. This is MLK Boulevard in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's right on the edge of downtown Chattanooga. And back about 17 years ago, they converted it from a one-way street to a two-way street, which slowed traffic but had some safety concerns. And then just a couple of years ago, they actually went and moved that from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. And this is these two pictures that you see here are actually kind of the same location. You can see it added a little bit of vibrancy, a little more walkable nature to that. Main Street in Greenville, South Carolina is an example that gets, at least in my transportation planning world, gets tossed around a good bit. In the early 70s, this picture you see on the left, it was what Main Street in downtown Greenville looked like. And what they did was they narrowed the road down to 2 lanes and added parking, added street trees. And now it's very vibrant with a lot of local businesses along the roadway. In fact, they just recently extended that treatment across the river to their new ballpark. And as we think about this, we know that there are trade-offs. So, we want to think through, what kind of gains in livability that we may get for, some changes in vehicular service. And we're not talking about big changes. We're talking about, 30 seconds a minute or so in terms of what could be congestion. And we want to think back to what these overall goals are. So we've heard a lot about safety and health. We've heard a lot about managing the resources to maximize value. So, on streets where you may already be doing repaving, thinking about those are the times that you may want to think about making some changes. And so those kind of things as we think back to each one of these things as we think through the street grid. As we started this, or one of the first things, this is kind of a map of what is starting to be some of our draft potential street typologies, or the way the street grid might look. One of the first things that kind of jumped out to us was as we talked with our colleagues there at with the city staff, was the plans to upgrade traffic signal synchronization. And that's something that we would want to look at throughout the prioritization of the projects that could potentially come out with this. And we also know that there are some unknowns relative to the Riverfront Legacy Master Plan. So, where Waterman crosses that campus, Douglas Avenue on the north side there, and Main Street along the east side there. So, there needs to be some flexibility in the plan as well. To that end, we know that there's a lot of development. We've been talking to a lot of the development community downtown to just try to understand where those development parcels are. The network that's kind of shaking out of this, and as Mike said, this is still kind of in draft form, so we're still working with this and adjusting it. But the network that's kind of shaking out of this is shifting the transit system to really use the grid, and rather than pulsing in and out of the transit center. We've talked a lot about trying to improve bicycle and multimodal connectivity through downtown, and picking up some extra capacity on that end where we can. And one of the big things that we've seen here are the potential for one-way to two-way conversion. So, like I said earlier, we've heard a lot of comments on, I don't go downtown a lot, or my customer doesn't come downtown a lot, and they get turned around on some of the one-way streets. So looking at where some of those opportunities are, we've kind of identified some potentials on Market, Topeka, Emporia, and English. We're still working with Main Street right now to see what opportunities there are there. But just to give you some sense, Emporia Street is one that there's currently some funding. The city has some funding to do that conversion. So this is one that's probably has a sooner time frame that it could potentially happen. So we've looked to see what that could look like. And this is essentially just reversing one of the lanes and flipping the parking. But like I should emphasize that these are really just concepts. I wouldn't take these as plans. The city would then actually draw up their own plans for these. For Market and Topeka, we've been looking at kind of what the potentials are there. Currently, both of those streets carry between 2,500 and 6,500 vehicles a day, and the capacity of those streets is 25,000 and more, given the lane space per day, I should say. So we've looked at to see what could happen if you did that as two-way streets. I know this is kind of small too, but this is just to depict the tool that we've developed to use for this. So what you see here in each one of these bands represents a block, and we know some of these blocks widen and narrow as you move up and down the street. So we've used this as an opportunity to determine what can fit on what block. And I should reiterate that we're still actually kind of working through these, so I wouldn't consider this final by any means. But this is just to kind of give you an example of the tool that we're working through to see how those one-way streets might look, knowing that each block varies a little bit by width. English Street is one that we think may be a low-hanging fruit. It connects the arena over to to Century 2 or Riverfront Legacy Master Plan area. You've got Fidelity building their new facility there. So there's a lot that's potentially happening there that could increase the vibrancy on the street and warrant possibly slowing down some traffic on English Street. We know there's been a lot of talk on Douglas. There's a previous plan that had been in place for East Douglas, and for this exercise, we wanted to just see what that potentially would look like if you carried it through downtown. So we've really just looked to see what potentially Douglas might look like if it went from its current 5-lane section down to a 3-lane section through downtown, and had carried through a potential concept for that to see how that might look. One of the other questions that we asked when we first started this exercise was, we asked people, what is the main street that you have in Douglas, or what are the main streets that you have in Wichita? Notwithstanding that you have a street named Main Street. But, everybody would say Douglas. And if we asked what the second one was, everybody would say Broadway. So what street is that has the potential for, more economic viability and activity and vibrancy? So one of the things that we looked at on Broadway was potentially taking the 4 lanes that are there. So you have 2 lanes in each direction with curbside parking on most blocks. That changes a little bit. But we also heard a little bit from folks that they were a little nervous on the 4-lane section in terms of turning traffic, and people would avoid Broadway for some intersections where they weren't quite sure if people were turning or going through on the 4 lanes. And also knowing that transit is looking to potentially shift to using the grid a little bit more. We looked at a potential for a 3-lane section, which would be a 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane and parking on either side. Provides a little bit better width for the buses that might want to, that would use Broadway. And we've looked at a few concepts for that. And really, those are the concepts that we've looked at so far. As Mike said, this whole thing is a holistic exercise for us. We're looking at how the network works together and not just one street versus another. So as we kind of move forward, we really encourage y'all, if you want to give us your comments on the comment sheets there that I think Mike has handed out, or please mark down March 24th for our open house at Candela Deluxe. We'd love to talk to y'all more at that if you've got more questions. And finally, if you want to jot down the website for the project here at wichita.gov/downtown streets, that's where we have this presentation. Should be, if it's not already posted, it should be posted in the next few days. And there's some other information there as well.
Thanks, Jim. Does anybody have any questions? We have Jim on the phone, so he can say, yes, ma'am.
And I may have missed it, but is there an estimated cost for what we're looking at? Are we looking at some budget?
Actually, no, there is not an established. I think Jim mentioned that there is some money that's available for Emporia. That's really the extent of anything that's on the side streets. There is some money for changes to Douglas that are to the east of where this concentration area is, but that's still in the very early stages with regards to. Yes, sir.
When you go to 3-lane streets, I'd be concerned if there's public transportation, the buses going there and they stop, and everything would stop, wouldn't it?
That's one of the considerations that we take into consideration with regards to that. There's bus pull-ins that can be put in certain areas. We, for a community our size, have too many places for the buses. The buses are stopping in too many places, let me say that. So what we want to do is actually have people and have them more identified and be able to also get them off to have pull-ins. So there would be some parking that would be removed, but that would take the bus and move it off the lane of traffic. So that's a big concern, as Jim can mention, whenever you go down to 2 lanes in each direction, what do you do if that's a major transit?
That's a big deal.
It is.
And then, earlier, there was some talk about some fancy parking meter thing. Is that gone? I hope.
Well, there's a parking study that's going on right now, and obviously that's much like this. It's far-reaching and has a lot of different components to it. We have some of the oldest parking meters in the country, and we spend a lot of time maintaining them, and it's very hard for people. Very few people even carry change with them anymore, and these things take dimes, nickels, quarters. So part of the parking plan, and I'm sure at some point in time we'll come to the DAB and present that, much like we're presenting this too. What we wanted to make sure is every option is looked at to see what we can do to improve the ability to park in the downtown area, whether you want to use your smartphone as an app, and there's also the concern of making sure that parking turns over so that people use the parking space but then move on, not park there for 8 hours right on the street. So there's a number of components, and I think that'll be part of the presentation that we make concerning the parking.
So that parking for a long time was brought up because the employees would park there for a long time. And I think the employers are all over that problem, and that just isn't a problem.
There's certain areas, we struggled in the Old Town area. There was a whole thing about chalking of tires and whatnot, but there are certain areas of the Old Town section where you have employees that are parking right out in front of restaurants, and it's clearly marked 2 hours. So
the boss would be all over them for that.
you would think, but we've been surprised at the lack of assistance, let's say, in that scenario. But that's part of that all overarching parking plan, which I think especially dabs like this will, I think, get a lot of information out.
We wish people would park for a long time downtown.
There's so much parking in Wichita. Where I come from back east, oh my gosh, people pay a lot of money for parking spaces that we pay very, very little money. But again, if you have a lot of parking spaces, that means you don't have as much economic development as you could have. But I say, hopefully these projects that we're doing will sort of tie back in together, which is very important that they tie back in together. That's something that we don't want to do, is just create all these different plans and none of them are linked back to a common goal.
Well, the last thing, those one-way streets going north and south used to go one way from, A to B. Now they change back and forth, and that's very confusing. And I'm not sure there's any value in one-way streets going north and south. I think east and west there is on First and Second.
Well, I think as Jim mentioned, downtown Wichita is sort of a hodgepodge of all different decades of what was important and what people wanted. And now hopefully something like this can bring it all together under one common goal as compared to having that. Because it does get confusing. You see people all the time that'll come up to all of a sudden it crosses Douglas and it goes from one way to two way.
Right.
And that's very, especially as people come in the summertime, you don't want that. You want people to know how to get around.
And then the study says it stops at Murdoch, which is where the hospital starts.
Mhm.
And that hospital is a mess for, going through.
The number of people that are going to the hospital, visiting people in the hospital, those are huge areas.
Through to the other side of the hospital.
Very true.
Because Topeka turns into Emporia and doesn't go to the hospital. So I'd like to see it extended beyond Murdoch and fix that.
Taking baby steps,
Yes.
right?
Two things. I just wanted to know, is this going to be shared with the Access Advisory Board?
Yes,
at some point?
yes, yep. And especially after we have some of the public outreach, that meeting in March, that's what we want to make sure that we do before we go out to the advisory boards. We have a lot of the public feedback, because that's what they rely upon. Well, what's the public saying when they get an opportunity? So yes, that will be the case too.
And just anecdotally, oftentimes Main Street is already a two-way street because we can sit in our conference room and have meetings and look out the window and watch people driving the wrong way down the one-way street. Often.
then there's a problem, so. And, yes, sir.
A couple of years ago, perhaps, we were talking about the bus system and how we want more people to ride the bus. And one of the advantages we were talking about is that the buses stop more frequently. So you don't have to walk from one bus stop to another. But it sounds like you're saying we have too many or too frequent stops on a route.
And that's the one thing, there's no set rule it really is when you look at Douglas, especially, you don't want buses stopping at every corner.
No.
We have a lot of those huge bus shelters that are on Douglas, and I'm sure they were put in for aesthetic purposes and whatnot. But when you start stopping a bus at everyone, we have to get used to in Wichita, in public transit, an acceptable distance to walk between bus stops is 6 blocks, which is a long way in Wichita. That's a long way in Wichita. If we get to 3, I'll be happy. So that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that you have good amenities and that people walk to those areas and the buses can pull off the street or out of the lane of traffic so that people can load and disembark. So there's a middle ground to all of that, and that's what we're trying to attain, is that middle ground.
Thank
Mike or Jim, you mentioned the meeting on the March 24th at the Lux. Do you know what time?
Jim, do we know that yet?
We're still narrowing down the time on that. Like I said, we just nailed down the Lux actually today, so I felt comfortable kind of giving you location, but we should be communicating the time of that here in the next couple of weeks, I would expect.
Or we can get it in the newsletter and send it out to this group. We'll have another deputy before then. But, awesome. Okay. Any other questions for Director Tan or for Jim? Mike, thank you for being here this evening. We really appreciate it. Jim, thank you for joining us via Skype tonight.
Anytime you want to talk about transit, I'll be more than happy to come back and talk about that.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, so now item 9 is traffic signal petition for 21st Street North and Broadmoor, and we have Gary Jansen with us. You know the drill, Gary.
Good evening, Gary Jansen, city engineer. I did not know until just this evening. I love the fact that Tracy is on this board because she recognized that traffic is not bad in Wichita. Thank you.
So, this is a breeze.
I thought maybe I heard you wrong because rarely do people at any public meeting say that they think traffic's good. So I'm with you. Thank you. Awesome.
So is this correct? I've heard for years that the average commute time in Wichita 17 minutes, and during rush hour, it's 17 and a half minutes.
That's probably pretty close because our rush hour really just doesn't amount to much regardless of what the perception is.
Yeah.
There's very little delay, so. Yeah.
The bad thing about that, sorry, side note, is that it doesn't promote active transportation, right? There's no real reason to use transit or to walk or bike because you can get anywhere in less than 40 minutes. So it becomes even an equity issue. So we can have another discussion about that some other time. All right, Gary.
I might, if you don't mind, real quick, and Mike left, but I was going to mention one thing on the last time you heard, just so you know. That conversion of Emporia to two-way will be done by the end of the year. It's something you kind of want to watch and keep an eye on. It's part of it's to go to two-way.
All the way.
Well, so our plan is to go minimum from Waterman to 2nd Street. There's some factors involved in that right now, and we're working on a preliminary design. And the biggest cost is traffic signals. So you've got to add them for the other direction. Otherwise, it's pretty quick and easy. And there's a fairly limited budget. It's part of the development agreement for what's being built at Douglas and Emporia. If you've been down there and seen how quick that building's going up. As part of the incentive with that development, there's funding for that conversion. So we're locked into a certain amount, but we definitely want to get through by the arena. We're hoping we could go from Lincoln all the way up to Central, because that would make a lot bigger difference. But we're going to catch part of it for now. So anyway, keep posted on that. Keep an eye out. So the item I have before you this evening is a proposed traffic signal petition for 21st and Broadmoor. And I've got multiple things on this map I'll show you. The bottom one's a little bit small, but I'll talk about what's on there. In August of this year, the city council approved a plat for the Union Mill development, which is on the left side of the road there, the largest section. And there was also a community unit plan required. And as part of that process, it included a requirement for a guarantee to conduct a traffic impact study for the development. On the east side of the road, the right side of Sundance Apartments had a CUP originally approved by the Planning Commission back in 2016. So over time, effectively the same conditions were put on both developments, both going to be apartment complexes. The traffic impact study had to be done. Baughman did that work. Phil Myers here with Baughman in case you've got any questions I can't answer. To look at the impact of these two apartment complexes, needless to say, we're going to generate quite a bit of traffic. And the result of that was a couple of things. If you look on the upper left, the big square there, using projections from these apartments, so we've got standard number of views for trip generation, excuse me, for multifamily, and adding that to the traffic that's already there. A traffic signal is warranted once the development goes in, so we might as well get ahead of that now. So the plan would be to install a traffic signal at 21st and Broadmoor for all directions. The upper right area that you see there is actually back over on Rock Road at Rock Hill, which is currently signalized. Going back to the right is one of the main entrances into Bradley Fair. And that is already signalized. It's a little hard to tell, but the main thing is if you see down there where the two cars are at, you can see some black lines, and that would be some modifications to that existing median, just to provide more storage for that northbound left turn, because if there's going to be additional movements into the development. It will keep that traffic from, hopefully, that left turning movement from being in the through lane and choking off that movement. So those two things are slated to happen with this petition. If you look back down to the bottom again, so how the petition process works, and some of you probably heard me explain this before, but when it's a guarantee of a plat, the only reason we're here tonight is because we did not get 100% of the property owners to sign the petition. The petition was only signed by the Union Mill development owner on the left side, which happens to be 75% of the area. By state law, a petition can be valid one of two ways. Either by area of the entire benefit district. If you've got one property owner that's got the majority of the area, they can get a valid petition by state law with their signature alone, or a majority, over 51% of the resident property owners. In this case, it would have been a split because you've got two property owners, so the area governs, and that's okay. The 100% petitions that we see that come through my office all the time for new development never come to the district advisory boards. They go in front of the city council as a consent agenda item because there's one owner and they've agreed to pay for all the costs, so we can skip around that part. We are here tonight, and depending on your recommendation to the city council, I will take the same item in front of the city council and recommend that they also consider approving this petition. I will tell you, the owner, the developer of the Sundance Apartments, we have heard from it several times. At one time, they were planning on moving forward first and agreed to look at the traffic impact study, and that's why they even got it going. Their development plans have changed as far as the timing, and so they just were not ready to sign the petition at this time. As far as I know, I don't think they were planning to protest in any fashion, not that there is a formal protest process, but I don't think anybody's here tonight representing that developer. We do have an agent for the Union Mill developer here if you happen to have any questions for them. To give you some specifics, the petition again was signed by the Union Mill owner, which represents 75% of the improvement district area. Our estimate of total cost is $363,000. That's for the traffic signal and the paving improvements on both 21st Street and Rock Road. So what we have historically done over time, we have a budget in our capital improvement program every year for the city at large to install traffic signals at major intersections that warrant traffic signals. What we've also done in an effort to help development And the fact of the matter is, you've got other people already in here that are adding traffic burden to these intersections, so that we don't put all of that cost burden on those developers. The city of Wichita is going to split the cost here and pick up 50% of the cost of the project. It's something that's worked really well. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's fair. And it helps us get these projects done a lot more effectively. So the estimated cost, $363,000. We've got budgeted, within 2020 for the city at large to pay for half of that cost. And the developments would pick up the other half based on the split area. They pay by the square footage. So if that all made sense, hopefully that did, we would ask for a recommendation to go to the city council to approve the petition as presented and to be able to move forward with the project. And assuming that happens, we would hope to have probably all of this in place by the end of the year. Traffic signal are a very long lead time piece of equipment these days. There's very few manufacturers across the country, and one of the biggest ones closed down last year. So it's 5 to 6 months waiting on traffic signals to be fabricated. So it's a real big timing issue. But so either way, hopefully we'll be done by the end of the year. So I'm happy to stand for any questions.
And I just want to make a comment real quick, just so you know, I've been on the DAB since 2015 and then on council, and I think this is the first time in District 2 we maybe added a signal or very few. The city is very prudent about adding traffic signals because we don't want to slow down traffic. So when the count deems that it should happen, that's when it comes to us. So I always applaud engineering and your staff for making sure that we're getting where we need to, and people ask for them all the time, but not when they're not needed or.
And I appreciate you mentioning that because we have standards we follow, same standards that communities follow nationwide for what we call warrants for traffic signal that have to be met. And we've encouraged the city council to be steadfast in following those rules and doing the same thing because, as the council member said, if we went off of public perception and opinion, we would have a traffic signal at every single intersection in this town. So.
Truly, I get a lot of calls about people wanting traffic signals. So Dave, did you have a question? Dave wants traffic signals at his driveway.
You did talk about 21st Street going west and then turning left into that new development. You're kind of cutting that off a little bit, but there's no storage. Yet there's a bunch of storage going the other way to go into Applewood. And there's Applewood compared to all that traffic in that area, there just isn't any comparison.
So and I appreciate you mentioning that. If you see the area of the rectangle just to the right of that traffic signal light, it's kind of hatched out. There's an existing median there. I have no idea how that thing ever came about, but what that median serves the purpose, and I appreciate you mentioning that, is eastbound traffic. It creates a left turn for them to go north onto Applewood. And because of the limited number of amount of development up there, I'm surprised that ever happened. We're going to take that median out, and effectively what that will become is a two-way left turn lane. And it's not ideal. It's not ideal, but we've got to deal with what this offset here is the problem. These roads are offset in the wrong direction. And we see this around town often. It's not ideal, but you do have the potential that you could have two people from opposite directions entering that turn lane at the same time. It happens around town. There's quite a few places. It's not the best, but we've found that people generally get used to it, especially because you've got a fairly small number of lots to the north. But I think it'll work okay.
So
There's nothing that's ever perfect, but I think this will
So
work.
you're just going to eliminate that
We're just going to get rid of that median.
and you turn either way.
Yeah, and so we'll stripe that there to where people know that you can
That
turn
makes
in
more sense than that.
either direction. And thank you for mentioning that, Dave. I forgot about that part.
Any other questions, comments?
I don't know.
No, go ahead.
I don't know if this is, so will these be censored lights? So if there's no need for the light to come on, then it won't come on?
They will. So all of our newer traffic signals in particular have detection for vehicles and pedestrians both. Now, contrary to what it may seem like, those traffic signals can't just necessarily react at a moment's notice. We still will look at what typical traffic patterns look like once the development goes in. We still have to program timing patterns into those signals, but signals can learn, they can adapt. And yes, so if you get, it won't just go green to Broadmoor if no one's there. It'll still leave the primary as 21st Street, there's no doubt about it. And it'll have, we use radar detection now that works better than cameras. You see the cameras in a lot of places, they have a lot of issues with weather. Radar detection works really well, it's really reliable. And it detects when there's vehicles there. It'll still give a certain amount of time to 21st Street before it turns to Broadmoor, but at least it'll know at some point in time it's got to go green to Broadmoor. So yes, good question.
Yes, Gary, did you say the city is picking up about half the cost
We would pay for 50%
to
of the
encourage
cost.
development?
It's that, but primarily, if you look at all of the land along both sides of Rock Hill going through there that turns into Broadmoor, it's not just these apartment complexes.
True.
So, if we could ideally, the way these improvements work, we would assess everybody along both sides of that road for these improvements, but that's really challenging, especially after someone's been there for over time. So I think it makes sense that they still pick up some of the costs, and we share that with them. And we've done this in quite a few places around the city. And if the additive bonus is that it encourages development to develop properties that there's nothing going on, then I think that's okay.
Did you want to?
Yeah.
Could you just state your name and your address?
Sure. Chris Broderick, 3927 North Bayberry Circle. Will there be crosswalks involved on the Broadmoor side of that?
There will be crosswalks on 21st and Broadmoor, thank you for asking. We will, if you can, it's a little hard to see, but there's some black shaded stuff there. If you go straight up from the traffic signal pole that you see even on the north side, there's a wheelchair ramp in there. I should have had a pointer and I could have showed you a little bit better, but it would be crosswalk all the way around, yes. And there'll be pedestrian buttons and countdown timers like we put on all over the signals, so.
Any questions? I think Gary is hoping for a recommended action to recommend the approval of the petition.
Motion to approve as presented.
Thank you, Nick. Second from Nazir. All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Awesome. Motion passes. Thank you, Gary, for being here. Thanks for your great presentation as always. Before we adjourn, just a reminder, Saturday is our district breakfast. And our very own Corey will also be presenting with Tammy Creer from the Greater Wichita YMCA and Chair of the Food Policy Committee on our work to develop a food master plan. So please come at Saturday at 8:30. It's at the Regent, and there's always a nice breakfast, and we'll have police and fire updates too. So hope to see you all there on Saturday. Thank you all for coming. Have a fantastic downtown day, and I would love to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion.
Thank you. Second. All right. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say bye.
Aye.
Have a great week.